Hello, everyone. This is Andrew Vaiciunas. I'm here to talk to you guys about debugging your web applications. I'm just going to wait a second just to get confirmation that we've got everything in order here. All right, looks like we've got everything in place. So again, my name is Andrew Vaiciunas. I'm a LANSA Sales Engineer with LANSA. I've been with LANSA for well, this year I rejoined after a 10-year hiatus, and I was with LANSA for some 20 years before that. So there's a lot of stuff that's new to me in this in the LANSA world, but there's also a lot of stuff that's that is old hat. And this is one of those things where a lot of this is old hat for me. So moving forward then, as soon as my screen moves forward, there we go. Something happens. We're running a web application. We're developing a web application and something happens. You get a screen that says, I've got this big error of some sort. Or something's just not adding up correctly. Not the right data is appearing for you or something. Well, how do we handle that kind of stuff? What do we do next when we see this type of thing or we see the results that aren't correct? What do we do next? Well, there's a few things that we can do. First of all, there is within the LANSA IDE, within Visual LANSA, there is a number of debugging facilities there. And we'll go through some of that. Some of you may have already seen this kind of stuff. Some of you, this may be new to some of you. Or maybe you've just never had an opportunity to use it, never needed to because all your programs are perfect. Well, that could be. Some of the other things that we can use. There's some browser tools for debugging to see what's happening, you know, what's actually under the covers with the web page and what's happening inside of that web page. And there's also LANSA log files. There's a series of log files that we can look at and generate. And here's where we can say, hey, at this point in my logic, because I know something's wrong, I'm going to put something out to some sort of a log file. All right. And so, you know, we'll look into how we can do that. A little bit about what's running, you know, how, you know, what you need to have in place. And just a couple of things maybe that might be going wrong if your debug isn't working properly. We'll just take a brief look at that also, but just to let you know that there are things to look at. Just because maybe something isn't working right now with debug, it doesn't mean that it's not going to work, or it doesn't mean that something's, you know, that everything's broken or something like that. It just means maybe there's some simple things that you can look at to get that, you know, to correct that. Also, you know, just under the covers, you know, what would you notice in the Windows environment, say, to know that something's happening, right? That in your debug environment, that it is actually running something. So what are some of the things in the background there? And then, of course, in every debugging situation, there is that chance that you're just not going to find the answer all by yourself. And in a case like that, we've got a series of things that's, or a series of steps that you can probably go through, or they should go through, to try to understand how do I change my application, or what do I do next, or how, you know, maybe I have to report something to LANSA that's, you know, that we didn't know about possibly. So what are some of the other options after running out of all your options using the debugger and the log files and logging events? So what I'd like to do at this point is maybe just get a little bit of an idea of, as soon as I find that, a little bit of an idea of who we all are. And if I can just probably get a little bit of, oh, here we go. Thank you. Just a little bit of an idea of who we are. I've got a couple questions for you. Just one is, what's your familiarity with LANSA? We've got, a good number of people here listening to this. Have you ever used LANSA before? Maybe you're brand new to LANSA and you haven't used it before. Are you a LANSA developer but have never done anything for the web with LANSA? Or am I actually a LANSA web developer and I'm kind of looking into this to maybe get some extra tips on where I can look or how I can work with a broken LANSA application possibly, right? So I'm looking at some of the results coming in. There's a few people in here that have never used LANSA before. So welcome to you guys. It's a thrill to see you guys here, and hopefully you'll get to see that, hey, LANSA's not bad. LANSA's really good, actually. And we've got these great facilities to debug your applications, mainly at our source level. So you don't have to get stuck into the details of JavaScript or CSS or things like that. So, all right. And then, so if we look at this, I can see that, yes, there are a number of LANSA developers here also. So welcome to you guys too. So I'm just gonna, it looks like it's a real mix here. So I'm hoping that, maybe something that I'm showing here today is gonna click with every one of you. All right, so moving forward then, there's, another question that I'd like to ask you guys, which is really like, why are you here, right? So we've got this mix of people. Why are you here? I want to learn about it, issues that I might encounter, during web development. So these are really the people who may not have done web development before using LANSA, or have never used LANSA before, or I'm currently experiencing issues during LANSA web development. So that's another possibility. So it looks like we have a little bit of a mix in this one also. So, so I guess that's good. It looks like I'm going to have a perfect target audience for what we're talking about here then. All right. Okay. So moving along, we've got everybody that talked about that. That's great. Thank you so much for your answers to all of this. So now, let's just move on to the first topic then, all right? Visual LANSA debugger within the Visual LANSA IDE. So I'm just gonna flip over to the actual Visual LANSA IDE now. So we should be seeing my IDE. In here I've got a list of all the the types of objects within a repository that I might have access to within the IDE. But today, we're just going to look at specific features of the IDE. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring up an application first of all, right? So I'm going to go to my favorites here. I've got a series of things that I put together just for this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up an application here, right? So I'll just call it up and then I'll execute this so that we can sort of get an idea of what this is. Here's the editor. And let me just run this application. Okay, so now we're running this in a browser, right? And it comes up and it says, here are state population. Once it comes up, there we go. So here's a list of all the states. So I've got a little database out in the back, and of the 51 states and territories within the United States. And as I click, well, I can see there's a list of them all the way up to the bottom here, down to the bottom here. And as I click on each one, I see the cities that have populations more than 100,000. So there we go. Alabama's got some 5 of them. Arkansas, Arizona's got a lot. California has, as you would imagine, California's got a lot of cities that have a population over 100,000. Florida, curiously enough, has a lot also. So that was kind of interesting. So that's what this application does. All right. So if I just wanted to see, using just in a normal application that's actually working, to see how this debugger works, I would go back to here and I'd say, I want to run this not just by executing this application, this page, but I want to debug this page, right? So once I click on this, what I'm going to get, right? What I'm going to get is this page attempting to run, but at the bottom here, we notice right, we notice that the LANSA IDE is flashing here. So I click on that and I see, this is the statement that we're just about to run, is the owner initialized, right? So there's a few things within here that I can do now at this point. I can step into, well, first of all, I can just say, hey, forget the stopping at the debug statements or whatever, just continue execution as though we weren't doing anything in debug, or stop the debugging entirely so I won't be able to use any of the debugging features. But the other thing is I can say I want to step into, and here the hint says I could use F8. I'm going to step into the next line. So here it says, I'm going to use, now let's just pin up this, the call stack here so I can sort of see a little bit of what's happening, right? So we're in the debug main 2 application here, page, and it says, okay, I want to run the load states subroutine, so I'm going to just keep hitting F8 now. So I just hit F8, and what it's done is take me down to the load states subroutine or method routine, and it's about to execute that. I clear this list. It just says I'm going to clear this list, and now I say I want to call the server routine that returns a list of states, right? Now, I can at this point say I want to maybe skip over this, right? So I can skip out of that, or I can also point to another line within the routine, right? So instead of going through 50 iterations of this, I can say I'm going to go straight to run to wherever I had positioned my cursor, right? So now it takes me straight down to here. Yeah, it's loading up that, okay. And saying, okay, there's the end routine. So it's run straight to here, right? So it's skipped over all of this and it's run straight to there. So now I can, hit the F8 or step into a little bit again, and it should come back to my initialize, hit the end routine, and that's the end of that. So now it's waiting. There's no more yellow lines here or anything like that. And I can go back here and it should show me, is it showing me that? Or is it still doing something? Maybe it's still doing something. Yes it is, of course, because let me just run that. Okay, hang on, continue execution. There we go. Okay, so what we should see back here is, there we go, all the state populations here. Now, what happens if I were to, now that application so far has run and has finished running, and now I see the results of this here. If I want to look at, say now, Alabama, I can click on Alabama, and now it's going to take me back to the debugger. Notice it's flashing down here again and saying, this is the routine. I selected something in my states list. So now if I hit the F8, right, which is the same thing as step into, right? If I hit the F8, I can start to dig into the next line. Something else now, let's have a look at what we see here also. We see on the left-hand side, okay, every once in a while it's gonna say, hey, you're taking kind of long. The browser is gonna complain a little bit and say, you're taking a long time here. Right? All I have to do is just say wait, right? And it'll just wait. That's just a browser feature. Nothing to do with LANSA, nothing to do with anything else. Over on the left-hand side, we see a tab here with variables, and it's showing me a list of the fields and their values for this particular program, right? So we can see the state name has Alabama in it, and that's what I had clicked, right? So it returned Alabama. The state code is AL, etc. Right? So now I can as I run through this application, these would change, so I can sort of see what's happening a little bit. Right? Okay, so let's hit the F8 then again, and it goes down to the subroutine here to say I want to start graphing the cities, so to clear that graph and then go get all the records for that. So let's just do that. I'm just gonna, this time I'm not gonna skip over it. I'm actually gonna go into that. Notice it skipped over that. It looked like it skipped over it. Well, why? Because I'm executing this asynchronously, right? I'm executing this asynchronously, not synchronously. Means it sort of submitted that other program off to execute, and didn't wait for it to complete. So in that case, I'm going to need to go to that, right? So because this doesn't know that it's running, and I can see here, oh, maybe a second, maybe if hang on, I'm just going to, there we go, wait, I'm just going to go back to here for a second. What I may have done, no, okay, so let me just hit F8 here. And let's go have a look at that, that other routine, right? Because if we go back here, we see there's no populations for Alabama yet. That's because this thing's still running, right? So if I now go down to here, we should see, yes, we should see, but I'm not seeing that. And why is that? Let's try one more execution here. Of course, it still thinks it's running. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back. Of course, this is doing this to me here. All right. See if this is stuck on any one of these. No, it's not. All right. So apparently, by flipping around here, what I've done is I've confused myself a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to refresh this. It'll just do this all over again, right? So yeah, go ahead. Wait. I think I was just taking too long here. So. So we should get this flashing anytime soon now. It should. It doesn't want to. Bah! Okay, let me kill that. I'm just going to kill that entirely here, all right? And go to debug, and here's a great opportunity to say, stop debugging this thing, all right? Now let's try this debug again, right? Just so so we can just start from scratch here. All right, so here we are. We're going through all of this. What I want to do is just get through loading the states. All right, so here are the states. Clear that list of states. Now go get the list of states. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go off into a server routine, another program that says, you know, find all the states. This is finished off, right? Because it said actually just send that off, like submit that off. And now we see, if I hit F8 here, we flip over to here, right? Let me do that one more time, right? And now we flip over to here, and we can see here we are. We're at the find all states. That's what we just requested to run. So as I flip through here, you know, it's going to go in a loop here, round and round and round and round, okay, 50 times. Now, we've got another choice here of what we can do at this point. On the server side, right, because it's not a browser application at that point, it's a server application at this point. There's something else that there's other things that we can do. We can not only just look at these values, but we would also have the ability to change these values, right? So I just double-clicked the state population, and I could actually modify this number, right? And that comes in handy when you need to, maybe without recompiling an application or changing data in the database or something, just say, hey, what happens if this value were this now? To see what would happen. Is it going to break now? Maybe the idea is that this is a broken application. I need to change some data to see if it would work with this alternate data. So this allows me to set the value of any of these fields at the point at which I'm executing now. Another neat feature here is in debug at this point when we're on the server is that I can also animate, right? So I can say, I want to take the animation to 50 milliseconds and say, I'm going to animate everything. So here it is. It's running around and round and round in circles. We can see on the left-hand side that the data is changing as it's selecting new records from the database, right? So so we would see that, oh yeah, it's gonna, you know, we could count this if we wanted to and say, yeah, we're gonna get, you know, 51 records coming in or 51 rows coming in. Okay, so or I could just say, you know what, just run to here, right? So I can take over at any time so that I don't end up having to you know, to wait, you know, all that time and everything, right? So oh, it's going to keep going back there. So I want to run to that point, right? So now it's selected all those records. I can hit the F8. So it's done selecting all of those, right? And back on here, I can see here it's selected my, my 51 records, all right? So, so that's a little bit about some of the things you can do, right? Stepping into executing to a particular point within the execution. Also, the variables on the server side, you can view them and change them. On the browser application, you can only view them, you can't change them. And also that you could stop debugging when you say, hey, I think I found the issue or I've just run into something else. Stop debugging. Let's start over, right? So there's some of the basic stuff on just the debugger at the IDE level. And notice we didn't go into any JavaScript here. We didn't go into any C# or anything like that. None of that kind of stuff is here. We're debugging at the LANSA low-code level. All right, so let me just stop debugging on this one here, and we'll flip over. All right, so there we are, and we're going to flip over and just move on a little bit. All right, if at any time we run into issues, right, where we're still not sure something's happening in the background, we do have the ability to look at log files within LANSA, right? With a combination of those log files and then also using facilities within LANSA to log information into the browser or into a log file, a custom log file. We have a few more tools for debugging the LANSA application, right? So let's have a little look into how that is accomplished, right? So let's flip over to that now also, right? So I've got another program here where we have an error. So we'll have a look at how the log file might help us, right? So let me bring that up then. So I'm going to call this program up, right? And it's the same program, but in this time when I run it, so when I execute this now, right, it's going to look kind of the same, but this time I already know, I can tell you, there's going to be a problem with this one, right? So I click on Alaska. Oh, great. Yep, there's one city greater than 100K. Alabama, great. Arkansas, beautiful. Arizona, great. California. Whoa, now we get this error. And we kind of go, what happened? What is all this stuff up here, right? So really, the key here at this one is that it found an error executing this routine within this server function. So how do I know what this is, right? So this is really just the short name because in the Windows environment you can't, executables don't have long names. So so we've got short names for this. So how do I find that? Okay, I'm going to go back to the repository here, right? And this is a short list of the repository. If I move over a little bit right here, we'll see the identifiers, right, for all our programs. So these are the short names. Here are the long names that we would refer to them normally in a program. Here are the short names, right? So the problem we had was with this guy right here, dbg data_1, right? So so that's the program that had the problem with it. Let me just highlight that. We can see back here. There it is. Debug data server E is the one that had the issue with that. All right. So let's take a peek. Let's try running that and see what's happening. Or we could try running that and see what's happening. But in this case, I'm just going to go, we know that we can use those debug facilities within the IDE. But what I'm going to do, first of all, is just show you that there is an opportunity here to look at error files, right? So I've customized my little menu bar at the top here to show the error log, right? And that's the one I'm going to be clicking on, right? So I click on any of these to add more options to this command line or button setup here. And I'm just going to click on that one, right? And I see, aha, okay, here it's 1623, so it's 1625 now. So, 423. And I see there's 3 messages at this point, right? So let's see. Okay, so it came up and it said, yeah, some sort of decimal value error of some sort. Okay, great. That doesn't mean too much to me yet. Yeah, check the X_error log, which is, by the way, where we are. And that's good, right? So, and then we look at this message and you say, okay, what's this? Populations data server with error. It's statement 43. Oh, look at that. An attempt to insert list entry less than 1 or greater than maximum allowed entries. Let's take a peek at statement 43 within this component, right? Which is this guy back, let me close this guy back here, right? So I open that up, and at statement 43, I see it is trying to add an entry to this list, and it's saying, it's trying to add an entry greater than the maximum allowed entries in this list, right? So let's go to the definition of that list, right? So I just did a right mouse click and I say, let's go to the definition of that list, just a little bit further up in the program. And it says, okay, define this list, counter that working, entries 10. Now, you know what? California, we already know, had more than 10 cities with more than 100K. So it was trying to put entries in a list of some 20 or 25 records or whatever, and only 10 were allowed in that list. Let's change that to, say, 100. I'm going to compile that, right? I compile that. There we go. Pending, in progress, completed. Let's go back and try running this again. So I'm just going to refresh this page, right, and get it to run again. Alaska, Alabama, Arkansas, Arizona, California. Look at how it worked this time, right? Okay. So, all right. So the log can sometimes be helpful to us too. Let's look at another example of how we can log our own things programmatically, where we know, okay, this program, we've got some problems with it. How do I maybe make some changes in the program so it would log stuff for me? So for that, I've got another little program here where I've added some of that here, right? Calling a server module with logging. Let me call this program up, okay? And same program, except this time I've inserted some logging lines, right? So at the what am I thinking? At the browser level, we can add things to the console log, right? And put little messages out to the console log, right? Now, what is that console log? I'll show you that in a second, right? So what we're doing here is we're saying, at this point, I want to send a message to the log saying, calling find all states. Sometime later, I want to say that, this returned with, so many items or something, right? So let's have a look at how that actually executes, right? So let's run this, okay? And let's see what this log is. Where do we find this? What else can we do with that, right? So we've run this, great, okay? Now, let's take a peek at this log, right? In this browser, in this case, I'm using Microsoft Edge. We could also use, what am I thinking of? This guy, the Google one. Anyway, we could use that and have similar functionality there, similar features there also. But I'm just going to show you this one. And in More Tools, so there's that little ellipsis button there, and I go to More Tools and Developer Tools, right? So when I click on that, what I get is this this other kind of window here, right, where it shows me, oh, here's my application running, right, and I can click on stuff, right. But I also see, oh, here is the HTML that's responsible for all of this, right. So as I click through here, I can see whether I'm getting the type of HTML that I might expect, say, and then also, as I fly through this, right, it might highlight the things that that I'm pointing to here, right? So if I went down here further enough, I would see a list here, and I could then see individual items in the list showing up. Okay. Now, the other thing in here also, and there's style sheets and other things in this also. So there's a lot here to learn about. But the console down at the bottom here, this is the piece that I'm most interested in right now. All right. One is, it said calling find all states. And then it returned 51 records from there. So I know that ran successfully and it came back 51 records. And I can click, and now I can click on something else, because back here, right, I see when I go to graph the cities, I've got a couple of other log lines that I run also, where I can say sysweb console.log and insert this message, right, or this message, right. So each time I click to graph the cities for a particular state. So let's go back to here, and now let's start clicking on some of these states. And notice now it says down here, I clicked for Alabama. Here I clicked for Arizona. Here I clicked for Colorado, right? So I get a little bit of feedback here. Another thing is that on the server side, you're not going to see browser stuff. So this isn't going to mean a lot to you, because you're not going to, on the server side, back on an iSeries or a Windows server or whatever, you're not going to see a browser there. You only see on the browser side this kind of information. So how can I log stuff there easily? So let's take a peek at that. So we've got the server module with logging also. And just straight out of the manual, I took out a little bit of code and created the RDML for logging to a text file. All right. So all I'm doing is I'm saying I want to write something to a text file, and I just put a routine name around it and parameterized it a bit. Right. So anywhere here I can say I want to print a simple log message. Here's the log text. Right. So what it's going to do is it's going to open the text file, write to the text file, and then close the text file. So I would end up with some text file on my server that will have whatever it is I want to log there, right? So in this case here, a couple of the log places here where I put a log in here is saying, find all states has been called, right? So I said, you print simple log text, find all states. And then I do all of this, and then here it returned that I'm returning X number of records to the caller, to the browser, right? And the same thing here when I'm looking for cities, I also log information that here's the city that I'm trying to find records for, and here are the number of records I send back, right? So each time I call that, each time I click on any of these, I'm not only, and it has nothing to do with this, I'm not only writing records here, but I'm calling the server module and writing records to a text file, right? So let me just minimize this and this so I can see the link to the log file, right? And here it is. Here's our log file. This is when it was called. Here's the latest one that was called at 4:33:53, right? So that's just a few seconds ago, right? So it's saying, it's giving me all the information about what it is I tried to send. Okay? So that's another way that I can get more information about what's happening in my application, even though I can't see those pieces, right? So I can use that also. Let's go back here, back to the presentation then again, and just take a quick peek. I know I'm running a little bit of over time. Hopefully you guys can hang on for just another couple of minutes. But I just want to go through just a little bit of this, is that within the LANSA options of the IDE, there's a couple things in the debug section that I'm just going to highlight for you, because this could make the difference between being able to use debug and not being able to use debug. So I'm back here now in the IDE. So back under File and Options, I see that there's a number of different things that I can set up for the IDE, like, you know, what it is I want to see or how I want to see the source code here, what font I want to use, whether I want to have indenting, etc. But also there's another section here for debug, right? And so there's two things to pay attention to. One is that it's saying, here's the computer name, right? So that is how I identify this computer, so that the server can call back to here and tell me what lines within the LANSA program it's executing up on the server. That's how it knows. That's how it tells LANSA here, this workstation, not at somebody else's workstation, what line I'm executing now. And even more importantly is this port number, because this port number, in this case 51235, we want to make sure that that is open through the firewall, because if that's not open for the through the firewall, it's not going to be able to communicate back any information about what program it's running on the server, or what line it's on, or anything like that, and that might be bad, right? So you want to make sure that you've got a proper computer name, and that the port number is correct also, right? Yes, there is a service. So within services on this PC, I want to make sure that that there is a service for this when I'm debugging here locally. The other thing is, if I go back here, another thing we'll see is that there are certain things running, right, as a result of, right, these services that are running and programs that are running as a result of me debugging. So before I debug anything, I'll see that here's something that's handling the web interactions with the LANSA web server here. And then there's also this Visual LANSA debug service, which handles just all that messaging back and forth over that port number between my workstation here and the server, right? And once I do start running an application, I'll see that it starts to add other jobs in here, right? So here's an additional job that showed up here, and another additional job that showed up here for the debug, right? Saying that here is a particular debug session that's running right here, right? So that's another thing. And how do I get to that, right? So here in Windows 10. I just do a right mouse click, look at Task Manager, all right? And I can then scroll down to those services. Here they are, somewhere in there. There we go. There's a communications listener. Right. So it's it's in this list of services that I would find all these, right? So again, it's just within the Task Manager, right? Within Windows 10. Just the Task Manager. I think in other versions of Windows, I think you get to it in some other ways, I believe. I can't remember now how we get to it in other Windows versions. Okay. Now, the last thing is, if none of these things helped you at all, right? You couldn't figure out a logic error. You couldn't figure out a programming error. The logging, the actual LANSA logs didn't help with you either. The messages didn't help you. Where do I go from there, right? So for that, let me just click on this. For that, I would go straight to the different LANSA community sites and to the LANSA support site, right? So if I went straight to the LANSA, developer.lansa.com, right? I've got another page here that kind of gives me a little shortcut to some of these, but let me just go over to developer.lansa.com in a browser, right? So I'm going to call this up, developer.lansa.com, right? And up should come, or up will come, should come once my PC wakes up here, under resources, right? So we'll get this nice little thing here, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff, right? But under resources, right? And when I click resources, it'll take me to this, right? So there's a number of things here. One is the LANSA blog, right? So I'm just going to open this in a new tab, right? So there's the LANSA blog itself, right? So different articles, I can do a search on this also, different articles on different things that you may be interested in and maybe not, but that's one good place to look at when you're running into something new, right? The other area is the LANSA forum. Now, I love this LANSA forum, and I can't talk enough about this, but this is where I can go in, and it's just like a normal forum, right? Where I can post questions, or I can search for questions. And there's hundreds of LANSA programmers that are watching this, that are posting their own questions and posting answers and stuff like that. So we see that there's different things I could be asking about, like for example, here we go, just something about a compiler, right? So I want to go find something about the compiler. So here's a whole bunch of questions that were sent about a compiler, and then we could dig into this, jump in post and look at the different responses that may have come back as a result of that question. So you do have to sign up for this. So it'll take about an evening or so to get to get your login, your initial password back. But it's well worth getting into, right? So again, just off of developer resources in developer.lansa.com, there is a LANSA forum. And then of course, there's documentation, e-learning, video demos, but in addition to that, there is of course LANSA support and everything that it has to offer too. So you can register a how-to question. You can register an error of some sort, and depending on the severity of the error, you may get a call back in just a couple of minutes, or if it's just something you just have a question on how to do something, that might take a little bit longer for a response to come back. But there's also all this other information, the expedited program change information, different documentation on everything. So this is also a good place to go to get information on any of this. So, all right. So that takes care of everything I was going to show you in just 13 minutes overtime. So sorry to anyone who's rushing to get anywhere. But at this point, Maura, I believe attendees, if they had any questions, I believe they have the ability to ask those questions, right? Am I correct in that?
Yes, sir, in the Q&A box, Andrew.
Ah, the Q&A box. Look at that. There's already 2 questions in there. I wasn't paying attention to that. Great. Okay. Stephen Pearson asks, can server modules be debugged on a remote server, specifically IBMI? And the answer is absolutely yes. And again, that is where on the server side, that's one of the reasons that we have the port number in there and the PC name, is because then, and you're looking at IBMI. So the IBMI then can send back information about the debug state, what line it's at, what the variable values are. It can send all that information back to the debug session on my workstation. So yes, they can be debugged that way also. Another question. Hi, how to debug on a line level on a server function running on the web server, not local? And again, so it's the same question, just that in this case, they're not asking specifically an IBMI, but any web server where which is being used as the LANSA application web server, we do have that ability to communicate back and forth the same way as you just saw here. Right. It just happened to be that I've got the server and client pieces of the application running all on one machine. But in the case where you are debugging against an actual separate server, say over a VPN or something like that, the same thing happens, right? So as long as the services are running and that port is open. All right. So. Looks like we may have taken care of those questions. Any other questions while we're still sitting here? I'm not seeing too many more questions. I really hope that I answered a number of maybe some outstanding questions you had. I really hope that those experienced LANSA developers might now see that, hey, you know, it's not that hard to debug LANSA web applications. And for those who are new to LANSA, I really hope that you got to see and hear that, hey, you know what, this whole thing isn't all that hard, you know, and that you move forward and hopefully you know, LANSA is in your future. All right. All right. So thanks to all. Maura, anything you want to add here?
Nope.
Great. Okay. So at that, I'm just going to end my meeting. Thanks, guys.